Okay, this is 6.5. This is solving absolute value equations. Um, so you need to start off by knowing what an absolute value is. And an absolute value, the definition is that it's the distance a number is from 0. But here's the thing. Positive 6 has the same distance from 0 as negative 6. So the absolute value of positive 6 equals 6. The absolute value of negative 6 has the exact same answer as positive 6. The absolute value sign are those two sticks. Oh, and I'm going to have to pause this so I can realign the board. Pausing. Okay, let's try that again now that we are aligned. The sticks here are those absolute value signs, but here is the key. Absolute values are always positive. There is no way to have a negative distance to 0. So the answer to an absolute value problem is always, always, always positive. So an absolute value equation is an equation that has an absolute value expression. The absolute value of x equaling 4 is an actual absolute value equation because 4 is a positive number. It has to equal a positive number to be an absolute value equation that works. But that means x could possibly be 4 because the absolute value of 4 equals 4. But x could also equal negative 4 because the absolute value of negative 4 has the same answer. Today you're going to have two different answers because absolute values, positive or negative, have the same answer. Now, absolute deviation, a number from a given value is the absolute value of the difference of x and the given value. It makes no sense. Here's basically what it is. If you are asked for the absolute deviation, deviation means how much does it change, deviate. So how much does it change? Well, from x to the given value is how much it deviates. And you would find the absolute value of that change. So from x to the given value, and you would find the distance or the absolute value of that. We'll come to that later, but you'll need to know that formula. So solving an absolute value equation. The equation this in absolute value signs, apparently C doesn't, in absolute value sticks equals C, and C has to be positive. Do you notice how many times we are focusing on the answer being positive? That means that ax plus b equals positive C, or ax plus b could equal negative C, because if it's negative inside the absolute value, the answer would still be positive. So you are going to end up doing, so absolute value can be positive or negative in the absolute value sticks. So the number inside here, but it will equal a positive answer. So this could be positive or negative, either one. Okay, so as I said before, if the absolute value equals 9, so the absolute value of x equals 9, that means x could be 9 or negative 9 as the input value. So x has two different answers. It could be 9 or negative 9, and you can write it exactly like this, x equals 9 or negative 9. But remember that the answer has to be positive for this to be considered an absolute value. Okay, so for example, and I don't think these are in your note-taking guide, but here's what they would be. So x, the absolute value of x equals 5. Well, 5 is a positive answer, so that means x either equals 5 or negative 5 for that absolute value to then be 5. Number 2, the absolute value of x equals 3/4. It's a fraction, which is fine, but it is a positive fraction, so that means x either equals positive 3/4 or negative 3/4, because both of those would have an absolute value of positive 3/4. But number 3, the absolute value of x is negative 2. There is no value whatsoever that will give us an absolute value of a negative number. So this has no solution. This would have no solution because you cannot have an absolute value equal a negative number. So how are you going to use that? You are going to be solving equations using absolute values. Now remember, this x minus 9, the absolute value of that expression equals 2. That means that that expression can equal positive 2 or that expression can equal negative 2. You are doing two separate equations. Two separate equations where one is a positive answer, one is a negative answer. And you must solve and check, insert grown here, both. So add 9 to both sides. We would do that here, and x equals 11 or x equals 7. X equals 11 or x equals 7 because the absolute value of 11 minus 9 and the absolute value of 7 minus 9, well, 11 minus 9 would be 2, and the absolute value would be 2. 7 minus 9 would give me negative 2, but the absolute value would be 2. So these both check out. Solve both, check both. Okay, taking a look at this problem, what's the difference? Well, I have 4 times this absolute value problem plus 6 equals 30. I can't set this equal to positive and negative 30. That's not how it works. The absolute value expression is positive and negative. So we've got to get the absolute value sign, the absolute value problem by itself. Oh, you guys have seen that before. All right. So I need to do, I got rid of the 6, get rid of the 4. Now you've got an absolute value expression. Now you can get to this. So get the absolute value expression by itself first. Now split up your two problems. So I've got a positive and a negative. 2x plus 8, that expression can equal positive 6, or 2x plus 8 can equal negative 6, one or the other. And we'd solve both of these. So x equals negative 1, or x equals negative 7. But if x equals negative 1, remember we always plug it back into the original. 2 times negative 1 plus 8. And 4, 2 times negative 7. Okay, now checking these, this would give me negative 2 plus 8 would be 6 times 4 would be 24 plus 6 would be 30. That one does work out. Here we've got negative 14 plus 6 would give me negative 6. But because it's the absolute value of negative 6, that's positive 6 times 4. 24 plus 6 gives me 30. So solve and check. And I think you're noticing that I'm not showing all of my undoing steps. Sorry. I'm not showing all of my undoing steps. I feel like at this point you guys have proved to me that you know your steps, but notice that I am showing this is the first one, this is the next one after that step. You must show each step and not just the answer to it. So please don't skip stuff. So if you're looking at your checkpoints, this absolute value expression is by itself on number 1, and it equals a positive answer. So x plus 6 inside there either equals positive 6, or I'm sorry, positive 11, or x plus 6 equals negative 11. That means x either equals 5 or x equals negative 17. One of those two, or both of those two. So 5 plus 6, and the absolute value of that does equal 11. Negative 17 plus 6, and the absolute value of that would still be 11 because the absolute value of negative 11 is positive 11. Checkpoint number 2, though, my absolute value expression isn't by itself. You've got to do that first. Subtracting 6 on both sides would give me 15. Dividing both sides by 3. And now I've got my absolute value problem by itself, and I can do my positive answer and my negative answer. And that means 5x equals 15 and x equals 3. And here 5x equals 5, where x would equal 1. Remember, we check in the original 3, 5 times 3 minus 10 plus 6, or 3, 5 times 1 minus 10, 6 equals 21. So this would give me 15 minus 10 would be 5. There's 15 plus 6, 21. This would give me negative 5, but the absolute value of that would be positive 5 times 3, 15 plus 6, and those both check out. Okay, so what happens if it doesn't work out? Now, this one, I've got 7x minus 3 in an absolute value plus 8, and that equals 5. Remember, we cannot split up our problem into the positive and negative until we've got the absolute value by itself. So to do that, we'd subtract 8 on both sides, and the absolute value of 7x minus 3 equals negative 3. There's no way for an absolute value problem to equal a negative number. So this has no solution. There is no value of x in the whole wide world that's going to give you an absolute value problem equal to negative 3. So here, get the absolute value problem by itself. 3x plus 5 equals negative 8. This has no solution. You've got to get it to this point where you have your absolute value problem equal to a negative before you can tell me no solution. Now, absolute deviation. Remember, this is the formula we said you needed to remember. The absolute deviation equals the absolute value of x minus the number. So the absolute deviation of x from 10 is 1.8. Find the values of x that satisfy this requirement. There's your formula again. So your absolute deviation is 1.8. And that equals the absolute value of x minus 10. And then we would solve. So go. So positive 1.8 equals x minus 10, negative 1.8 equals x minus 10. And then that means x equals 11.8 or x equals 8.2. And we would, of course, go back and check, but I don't want to waste your time with showing you that. Absolute deviation formula. Yes, you will need to know this. Okay. A volleyball league tryouts, or a volleyball league is preparing a 2-minute radio ad to announce tryouts. The ad has an absolute deviation of 0.05 minutes. The minimum, or find the minimum and the maximum acceptable times the radio ad can run. So the absolute deviation is 5.05. And the given value, so they said the absolute deviation is 0.05, and that equals x minus the given value. Well, you're deviating by 0.05 minutes from the 2-minute radio ad. So there's your given number. So we can do positive 0.05 or negative 0.05 because we can be over 2 minutes or we can be under 2 minutes by 0.05 minutes. So that would mean I can have a 2.05 minute ad, or if I add 2 to both sides, this is 1 point, or I could have a 1.95 minute ad. Oh, Miss Karen, I didn't identify the variable. X equals the time of the ad in minutes. All right, and here's your assignment for 6.5. Enjoy.